You need one of these.
Diet Coke. I live on Diet Coke, which is better than the old days when I used to live on Coke. No, never mind.
But yeah, can you have a Diet Coke?
Yeah.
Coke Light or Coke Zero?
Looking for the restroom.
No, no, he's talking
Coke
Diet
Zero.
Ah, Coke Zero.
A Coke Zero. I thought it translates into every language. No, never mind. How are you?
Guys,
Good.
I'm very pleased to have you here. Just some tips before starting. Just
Make love to the microphone.
make love to the microphone.
Exactly.
Oh,
Very close.
Don't nod.
Don't be afraid.
Okay.
oh,
There is no Coca Zero.
Sparkling water.
Sparkling water?
Yeah, anything. Regular water.
You don't drink beers?
I went from high school drinking Coca-Cola to college drinking vodka, scotch, and tequila. I skipped beer,
Oh, what
and I've
happened?
never.
We'll get a
I don't
sort of
think
review.
I don't think I've had 24 beers in my entire life.
Really?
I have no taste for beer.
Okay, so more
Tequila, to vodka. I fell down a hill and fractured my skull on tequila. This
Let's
is.
go.
You have no.
How
Takes
many
2
tequilas
seconds.
have you
1,
been on today?
2. Where's my thing here? 3. This is my picture on Slack.
Oh my
What?
goodness.
okay.
on Slack.
And that
I
did
had too much tequila and I went hiking and I slipped and fell 80 feet down the hill.
It
Oh my.
happens.
happens to the best of us.
But then I had bleeding on the brain, but I had to be at a Grammy party, so I walked out of the hospital. They said, "We think you have a head injury," and I said, "No, I have to be at this party." And I said, "I'll be back. If anything's wrong, I'll be back." The next day, I collapsed,
You
and
just-
they took me to the hospital. The bad news was I had bleeding right temporal lobe. The good news was over that weekend, I continued to drink tequila. The tequila made my blood so thin that I didn't get a blood clot.
No way.
So tequila caused me to fall down the hill, but then it saved my life. And that's the end of the tequila
some
story.
kind of karma. I don't know
Cheers.
what that
And
means.
now
Cheers,
you're
guys.
live on YouTube.
we already.
I'm ready.
Are we,
Yeah.
are we already live? Hello.
That's fine. I have everybody know I have no secrets.
That's good.
You can share your photo. you know.
That's actually a great introduction. So welcome to Café Sans Filtre, that we could translate into No Filter Café. I'm Jeremy, and welcome to our podcast session. What we are going to talk here is technology, innovation, entertainment, music, and in a very casual atmosphere. So feel free to share anything, ask questions. We'll have a mic for the public as well. So guys, if you have any questions, shoot us. So let's start. We have 3 persons around the table. We have Ted Cohen. I put into brackets Frank DiLeo because I looked at the pictures and you look like a little bit to Frank DiLeo. I don't know if you see who he is.
You know, I knew him.
Really?
Oh yeah. So
He stole his
That's
identity.
no,
funny.
So Frank DeLeo and I. So I'll give you the quick history of my career. In high school, I managed bands. I put on shows. My first real client was a guy named Eric Corman, who had a song called "All by Myself."
Okay, yeah.
All by myself. We can all sing along. Anyway, he was a jerk in high school. He remains a jerk today. But lovely guy if you're out there, Eric. I put on concerts all through high school. One of my favorite stories is my high school principal called me in and said, "I want to hire one of your bands for the spring dance."
First job.
I said, "Okay, they're $1,000." And he said, "The budget's 800." I said, "They're 1,000." He goes, "The budget's 800. And we're going to pay you 800 and we're going to clean your record of all your detentions and all your demerits." So I had to go back to the band and tell them that I only got them 800. but my record was clean. So
At least.
I then went to school in pre-med. That lasted 2 weeks, and I switched to communications and started putting on shows at school. And then that led to coming back after my sophomore year. One of my professors said, "You've skated. You know the term skated. You've basically just did the minimal amount to
Yeah.
get along." I was reading when I was 4 years old. By the time I got to school, I was bored. So all through school, it was like, oh, yeah, read it. Yeah, okay, great. Take the test and get a B or a C. He said, I want you to go home for a semester. I'm going to kick you out of school. I went back to Cleveland, Ohio, which is near Chicago, near Detroit. And I ended up meeting Frank DeLeo, who was a local promotion guy, and a guy named Steve Popovich, who went on to sign Meatloaf, which sold the Bat Out of Hell. Did you ever hear,
You guys know. You guys know better
don't-
than I do.
I'll start.
Meatloaf. You know
Oh, yeah,
Meatloaf.
okay.
Come on.
Meatloaf.
Have you
Bat
watched
Outta
Fight
Hell.
Club? He's the guy in Fight Club.
Okay.
With the tits.
Get it. I think I.
So, Meatloaf. It may work, it may not work. Who cares?
Feel free to sing if you'd like.
I'm not going to sing. I won't sing Meatloaf, that's for sure.
Meatloaf.
Anyway, I met all these guys. There we go, Meatloaf, greatest hits.
What happened with Frank after
So,
that?
Frank was a local, in the United States, and I think pretty much around the world, you have local promotion people, and then you have regional promotion people at record labels. So you're the
Okay.
guy who covers Paris, or you're the head of France for promotion.
But at that
or you're
time,
the
it
head of
was, like, very
He was
local.
local. He was in
Yeah.
Cleveland. He then went to work for RCA Records in New York and became head of promotion at RCA, moved over to Epic, met Michael Jackson,
Yeah.
and ended up managing Michael. But he was one of
Whoa.
my mentors. So, I mean,
Really?
I've said when I've been here the last couple of days that I'm very into mentoring people because people mentored me. They
That's-
adopted me. I went, why are you doing this for me? And they went, we think you're going to have a good career.
That's
And
a
so-
very small world.
Yeah, so Frank put me to, Frank and Steve Popovich, the Meatloaf guy. Let's see if we have a song. Meatloaf.
Meatloaf.
You don't know Meatloaf?
Well, we can listen it
You'll hear it
later on. No
we'll do it
worries
later.
if you.
I'll stop. Anyway,
So
they mentored me. They got me a job at Columbia Records. That led to a job at Warner Brothers Records, and I started doing artist development. So my whole thing has been working with artists, mentoring people, helping other people. I'll get phone calls saying, I just lost my job. Somebody told me to call you. You'd help me find a new one. And I've helped people find jobs. And I got a call from, you know what a headhunter is? An executive recruiter. People who hire executives for companies.
Okay.
A guy calls me up and he says, are you an executive recruiter? And I said, no. And he says, well, you get people jobs. Someone told me that you
Kind of,
went-
right?
And he goes, what do you charge? I said, dinner at the best Chinese restaurant in town. And that's my fee. We go to the best restaurant wherever they live. We go to the best restaurant. He goes,
That's
you know,
a
a
good deal.
headhunter gets paid like $100,000. And I go, that's a lot of Chinese food. So I've done a couple of those too. But Frank DeLeo was a great guy.
yeah.
Really a great guy. And so was Steve. And there's another guy named Billy Bass. There were three people that basically,
How do you do to
adopted
actually
me.
meet all these people?
I just,
Do you jump into events or?
I'm
how
very
do you-
shy, so it's hard for me to meet people.
I don't believe that. I don't believe that.
I'm incredibly shy. I mean, I'm telling you too many stories, but in high school, I went to a concert, and the local promoter, the concert promoter, called me over and he says, we want you to join the security. We want you to do security at our concerts. And I said, why would you want me to do security? And they said, because you sneak backstage at every concert and we can't figure out how you're getting back here. And I go, well, there's a door around the corner that's never locked. And I just go in. Anyway, I did security for them. My thing is always there's a way to do it. There's a way, if you have something you're working on, if you're working on an artist, if you're trying to promote a concert, if you have an idea for a product, you don't give up. You just keep,
Right.
pleasantly
Right.
knocking on doors.
That was the introduction. Thank you.
Might be
Now,
a long night.
I want to
We
tell
have
you one
other
more.
people
one
around the
more,
table.
One more story.
Yeah. Okay.
There's a guy
One
named
more.
Dan Steinberg who's a concert promoter in Seattle. Lovely guy. And he does these 1-hour interviews. And we were at South by Southwest last year, and he goes, I want to interview you. And he interviews me. A month goes by, 2 months goes by, 6 months goes by, and the interview has not aired on his podcast. And I called him up and I said, why have you aired my interview? I think it was good. He said, in 1 hour, I asked you 2 questions. You just kept going. I said, well, all you do is just edit and put in. So, Ted, what do you think of this? And then the answer's there. So he went in and he edited it, and he ended up airing it.
That I
But
believe
he
that.
literally
Yeah.
asked me an opening question, and somewhere toward the end, he asked me a second question. The rest of the time, I did what I'm doing right now, so I'm going to shut up.
All the questions are pretty open now, so that's gonna be risky. But we have also on my left-hand side Helen Sartory, who is from UK.
Hello.
Hello,
Hi,
Helen.
That's a true fact.
Tell me,
How's
who are you?
Brexit going?
Oh, any question apart from that one.
Okay, sorry.
Who are you? What's your story? Tell me.
My story is a lot less interesting than yours. I could just make some stuff
No,
about
it's probably
meatloaf,
very
and then.
It is.
So I originally studied music at university. So I did the opposite from you. I started in what I wanted to do, and then I went to the wrong university. I went to a very old-fashioned university, and although I had plans to go into film scoring and all that, the wonderful world of cinema, by the time I graduated, I realized that I had not been trained in anything remotely useful for a modern musician. I could write a great fugue, I could write a string quartet, I could write a symphony, but I'd never stepped foot in a studio. I hadn't used even Cubase, I hadn't used any music software, and I basically was just not equipped to be a composer or a musician. So I did the obvious thing, and I became an investment banker instead.
Obvious thing.
Yeah, I couldn't really think of anything better to do. So I became a technology banker.
Where was it?
Originally in London, and then I moved over to San Francisco to kind of concentrate more on technology. I got more and more involved in startups, and after about 5 years, I realized what I really should be doing was music. So I moved back to London, and since then I've kind of split my time. I write my own music. I do a lot of audiovisual shows. I'm very interested in interactive music, 3D spatial audio projects, but I still do tech banking on the side. I think I'm the only part-time banker in London at the moment. And slowly but surely I've been moving those two worlds together. So my other 2 hats that I wear are I help run The Rattle, which is a music collective and MusicTech incubator. We're currently based in London, but we're about to open up in LA. And I also help Abbey Road run their music hackathons. So I've kind of been delving more and more and more into like kind of halfway between those 2 worlds and doing more music tech. And I guess that's how I find myself at places like this.
Yeah.
And you work with 2 of my favorite people, Isabel
Yes.
and Chris.
Yeah, 2 of my favorite people too. Both good mentors.
And you told me also that you're going to move in LA.
Yeah, that's the plan. So we're opening up. We've been running this site in London. This is The Rattle for about 18 months now. We have 100 members. We're kind of at capacity. We really need to expand. So we're going to be growing the London space and also opening up in LA.
Which is actually where you from, Ted. You're
Yeah,
from.
so now we're going to be best friends.
I've been to 2 of the potential locations,
Uh-huh.
and either one's going to be killer.
I'm pretty excited about it.
It's pretty cool.
Not just for the weather. I used to live in San Francisco, and I've been trying to figure out an excuse to get back to California for about 5 years. So
What's the best place in LA for music?
Wow. I like the Viper Room.
Okay.
of course.
I know, but I like the Viper Room better than the Whiskey or the Roxy. Or the Viper Room is a little more street for Sunset Strip area, but there's some great clubs out in the valley. I go out and I get calls from bands saying we're playing this biker bar in the far side of the San Fernando Valley, and other than worried that I'm going to get killed getting through the parking lot, the music's great. LA's a great music city.
Yeah, I know that. And we also have Cristobal from Chile, right?
Yeah.
So tell me, Cristobal, who are you? What are you doing? What's your story? Tell me everything.
Well, my background is in sociology. I was studying sociology in Chile, and at the same time I was involved in philosophy and biology. something like very abstract, and then I quit. I finished my career, and then I started to be a musician for 6 months, and it was so depressed. So
Really?
yeah, because in a personal, trip, it was like so intense to try to get out your stuff in the music, and so it was a very like a lone trip, and it was so depressed. So then I go to a therapy and like a hyperventilation therapy, and I have a vision, and I see like a few animals that represent the Mexican culture. So I decided to go to Mexico and take a trip. Afterwards, it was like boring to trip like for 6 months. So I decided to study again. So I do my master degree in cognitive science. And I was interested in improvisation in music. So how is the cognitive reaction during improvisation? So we was making like physiological measures of musicians during the improvisation, trying to reach which are the moments when you feel that you are connected with the other musician, if it's the same moment for the other musician, and also if it's the same moment to the public. So we was trying to know if there is like a physiological correlation of this qualitative moment of the flow, when you feel that it's going on well in the
It's
improvisation.
really abstract. I cannot really see concretely how it works.
It's like you have when you are making an improvisation in music. In one moment, you feel that it's the flow. It's going right.
It's a good moment,
It's
right?
like a good moment. So we make like a heart rate and skin conductance measures to see if there is a correlation between your physiological state and this moment.
How do you measure that?
With sensors in the body.
Sensor in the body?
Yes, and actually
That's
also
crazy.
we record the session, and then after we ask to the other musician to see the record and to say, in this moment I feel like this, in this moment like more qualitative stuff.
So you do you have a business model? How does it
No,
work?
that was studying, and then I decided I go to Paris to an internship for doing this, and then they offer me the PhD, but Paris is too rainy. I don't like it, so I come back to Chile.
Just like
And
Belgium.
then I decide to make like a business model for this methodology, but not for music, but for cinema and marketing and public stuff. And so analyze the moment that people react for videos more. So like a good reaction to see which kind of scene you can produce to have the impact that you want to do.
Emotional manipulation.
It's a kind of stuff, but it was the only way to earn a little bit of money and be a more independent, because in the academia it's like you're always the last guy, because you have too many guys to go, and I'm like I don't like that. So I make this company, and then it was so difficult to people to understand the concept and the measurements. So I finished doing market research for creative industry.
Which is what you're doing right now.
That's what I'm doing right now.
Okay.
And I then go to all the events in music industry, events in Chile, to like support a little bit the market research of that. The market in Chile of the music industry was growing up very fast in the last 5 years. So actually it was a necessity of the industry to know a little bit more of the data of that. So that's how I come back to the music, but more for the music industry.
Okay, so are the future you are the future Ted Cohen of Chile. Maybe. No, I don't know.
I don't know.
So can you explain, there's this musical phenomenon that I guess we would call shivers. That some people get shivers when they listen to music, like a physical reaction to it. So is that the type of thing that you have measured?
Yes.
Can you explain why that happens? Not
why
to put you on the
happened?
spot.
That's
So
a good
I know
question.
it's an open question. We have some hypotheses that you have like a synchronization of your physiology with the others, so maybe the synchronization of the heartbeat and things like that, and probably that's like some explanation of the physiological state when you feel connected with another. But that's an hypothesis for today. We need more research, and that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, but
Fund this man and his research.
I explain sometimes. If I go to a show, let's say I go to the Viper Room and I see a new band,
Meatloaf.
and somebody says to me later, "What'd you think of the band?" If I say the lead guitarist is really great, the singer was amazing, I like the drummer, then I really didn't like the band. If they said, "How were they?" and I go, "They were effing amazing," and then why? Well, the singer was great, but they killed it.
Gave you the chills.
That's an emotional reaction as opposed to a cerebral. Guitar player's good, bass player was nice, drummer's okay, but it didn't get me here. It didn't get me. I didn't have that shiver.
Does
I
that
had
not-
I had a cerebral, intellectual reaction to. Yeah, they're okay. They're good.
The rational part of your brain was saying, okay,
As
they
a
are good musician,
Right.
but the emotional part was like, this is
But-
not working, or
In 1980, I'm going to pick a year here. 1987, no, 88. I got a call from a guy named Tom Zutot. I don't know if you know Tom, who said, "I've got this band I've signed to Geffen Records. They're called Guns N' Roses." He said, "I want you to manage them." And I went to see them at a club that doesn't exist. You said you spent time in L.A.? It's now where the Key Club is. It used to be called Gazzari's. They tore it down, built a new club. I went to Gazzari's, and by the third song, I had my head in the speaker cabinet near the stage, and
How much tequila had been?
no tequila. I literally had never seen anything like Guns N' Roses in terms of, they were Van Halen with all the stops pulled out. There was nothing contrived about it. It was just insanely great.
Does it get harder and harder though to see those acts and get excited? The longer you spend in the music industry, the more you see. Do you still get those moments with new
Yeah,
acts?
but it's with
or-
different things. I went to see Emily Sandy. And she played in the church at Hollywood Forever Cemetery in the cathedral. Just her and a guitarist, and no real amp. I mean, there was amps, but I mean nothing.
Yeah.
And just her and a guitarist, her voice and a guitar, had that same shiver as hearing Guns N' Roses at 120 decibels. It's not necessarily about the volume or the instrumentation. It's how that music connects for you. I mean, I've got certain songs that I would love to play for you and tell me, why do I get almost teary-eyed? Do you know Jennifer Warnes is? She did Up Where We Belong, and I've had the time of my life for movies, but she did an album of Leonard Cohen music. And there's one song called Song of Bernadette, and every time I hear it, I tear up. And I played it for a woman wanted me. I'll be done in a second.
Go ahead.
There was I'm working on a music service project for like restaurants and hotels and whatever that will measure who's in the room and how many people are here and what's the traffic like outside and what's the weather. And so the music on a Wednesday at 7:30 in Liège might be different next Wednesday at 7:30 because it's raining or there's a traffic accident. Sure. Anyway, I said, before I work with you, I want you to hear the song. I didn't tell her anything about it. She put on a pair of headphones. I played her the song, and about halfway through, she started crying. And I went, okay, we're working together. Because for me, all the technology is great, but at the end of the day, it's about the music and it's about connecting.
Let's talk about technology for 1 second. AR, VR, AI, all those things.
Mm-hmm.
Is there really something that you think is going to change the music industry, or do you think that there is any other technology that could work? I don't know.
Well,
Is there any...
I mean, one of the things that's important, like whether it's in gaming or in an immersive VR experience or an AR experience, one of the reasons that VR hasn't done real well is that the early VR, there was a disconnect between where the sound's coming from. And so you hear something over here, and when you turn your head, it's still over here. Now there's head tracking. The demo I just saw before I came here, the more that your brain can correlate what you're hearing with what you're seeing, you start falling into it. Even though you know it's not real, you're connecting with it. AI gets thrown around a lot. There's a company here, MusicMap. You talked to them a bit. They're great. It's machine learning. It looking at songs.
Have you tried it?
They were a client of mine for a year and a half.
Oh, really?
I worked with them. I'm working with another AI company right now.
That's great.
But and I saw the demo. If you were in the session today where the guy was showing music composition, the jazz composition, that was did you see that?
Yeah, that this different
Where the sax
amount
player
of
was
different emotions
yeah.
for each.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think it can assist. I don't think I want to go see a movie where the entire score of the movie was done based on machine learning.
So this is an interesting piece of study that I'm sure you probably all familiar with. That I had a similar attitude to AI music. I'm a classical composer in my origins, and some people that I studied with at university had built the first AI music generator. It's called Juke Deck at the time. And I was really disappointed with them. I was like, what are you guys doing? You're going to put me out of business. And I started listening to it, and it was kind of a bit shitty. And so, can I swear on this? It's with, it sounds
Yeah,
filtered.
sure, it's casual. It's no filter cafe. Come on.
It sounded pretty bad, and then I heard the next version, and within a few iterations, the music was pretty decent. And I started to get a little bit worried until I looked into the science behind how people feel when they listen to AI-generated music. Because the key quotient, which I guess you'd call enjoyment or understanding, as soon as you're told that something is written by a machine, it completely drops to zero. Because the core purpose of music is to communicate an intent. And as soon as you know that the machine that wrote it had no intent, it doesn't mean as much. So basically what I learned from that was it's totally fine to use an AI to write music, just don't tell anyone. Just pretend.
Yeah, that's true.
And
I understand that.
It's difficult to make like errors, like errors and defects are something like very human, and it's
Bias.
something that connect with the people, like probably there is a band and they commit errors, but if the error is about the feeling that they was during the scene, it's okay. It's something that's complement the experience.
Well, I can imagine that an AI could actually spot the moment where you need some human created song, but I cannot really imagine that an AI could actually create art, but I can imagine, of course, that all
There have
these
been paintings that have been done, digital paintings that have been done in the style of.
that's
Van Gogh
I would
and-
say painting is different than music because you have many more dimension to take into account with music. Your different senses. You are actually listening music everywhere. You are I don't know. You are in different states. You are I don't know.
It depends also of the audience, that people use music sometimes to get relaxed probably, and it's not something too fan of the music. So this guy is going to be okay with the AI music because he's using music only to I propose is very specific. But for people that like music and go to live music and like to do music also, it's going to be different. Because
Can you create vocals with the AI or?
Sure.
Yeah, sure.
It's
Yeah,
that,
right.
it's
I
that
don't
We
really
know.
see
weird.
some examples
They
today.
don't usually
There have been
speak
some.
English.
There have been some things done actually in Sweden, taking Britney Spears tracks, Ariana Grande.
So you can use a voice from another artist.
It'll sample the
Yeah,
voice.
do you not see the latest Black Mirror episode?
You can do a karaoke. And
Oh
use
yeah,
the
Miley
voice
Cyrus.
the
of
Miley
whatever you
Cyrus.
want
I
to.
just watched that last night. It was fantastic. But you also have a situation. There's a guy named Mark Geiger. I don't know if you know Mark. Mark runs William Morris. I met him when he was a senior in college, and at one point he had a company called Artist Direct that was the first direct-to-fan company, and we did a panel together at the what they call the MPAA, the Motion Picture Association of America, the ones who rate the movies and whatever.
Okay.
And we're talking about piracy in music and piracy in film and piracy in television. And I said to a guy named Bob Pisano, Pisano, who was running Screen Actors Guild, what they call SAG. I said, what are your feelings on about piracy? And he goes, I'm not concerned about piracy. I said, what are you concerned about? He goes, I'm concerned about digital actors. And this was about 10 years ago. And he says, we're about 10 years away from a believable blending of I want a little bit Stallone, a little bit Schwarzenegger, and about 10% Jean-Claude Van Damme. And it'll sort of, and you'll end up with a completely digitized actor that you can't tell whether it's human or whether it's, whether it's created. we've had this in the last Star Wars movie. They had to finish the Star Wars movie to finish footage of Carrie Fisher. In the last Fast and Furious, they had to finish the movie by recreating Paul Weller, and you can't see where they recreated him.
So, do you think it's good news or bad news?
I think
You
it's
know
a
what-
matter of adaptive. Changes. Always change is going to be. People are afraid of change always.
Yeah, that's true.
So it's something they're going to adapt, and
Yep.
I don't know if it's good or bad. It is.
It's just, it is what it is.
It's bad when you have the consequence that is bad. I don't know. People get crazy because of this stuff and start to make suicide. Okay, that's bad. But
It depends of what you make of it.
But I think it's very
guess.
easy to fall into the trap of like us versus AI. But that's not really how the technology is developing. The most interesting stuff that's out there is assistive AI, where humans are using AI systems to
Empower humans.
Yeah, and to
Yeah.
extend their creativity. A good friend of mine, Reaps One. I don't know if you know Reaps One. He's a beatboxer. He's created a
Who's that?
Reaps One. He's a beatboxer turned tech ambassador, but he now has created an AI beatbox opponent for himself, who he's trained on his own sounds,
Interesting.
but it will now beatbox back to him with ideas and rhythms and patterns that he would never have come up with by himself.
Yeah.
So he's using this kind of digital twin as an extension of himself to further his own creativity.
Yeah.
So I think the most interesting
Wow.
AI out there is where we can incorporate it into a workflow, not necessarily to make things easier, because I have a big issue with a technology that just makes music easy, but to really push the boundaries of what you can create.
Yeah.
Yeah, true. So I have another other questions, obviously. What would be your advice for those who are just jumping right now into the music industry? What's your, there are so many things to do right now. There is so many emerging technologies, business models as well. It looks like to me right now that the only thing that really changed people's life is Spotify. I just hear one thing when I think about music tech. I only can just think about one thing. It's Spotify. Everyone
Spotify is the only thing that's changed people's. But you have to remember,
massively,
you have
like-
to remember 8 years before Spotify, or 7 years before Spotify, there was Rhapsody. And there isn't much difference. If I showed you Rhapsody in 2000 and Spotify in 2007,
that's the same thing.
it was the same thing. Daniel and everybody did a better job of
Really?
marketing, did a better.
You've
You
worked
also
for
had Battle-
Napster, right?
I worked for Napster, and then I signed the deal for Rhapsody.
I read that on Wikipedia.
I
that's
worked for
true.
the original Napster. And I also worked, I joke, I worked for the Recording Industry Association at the same time. Because the joke was, I knew one of them was going to win, and I wanted to be working for the winner. The truth was, for the RAAA, I was working on internet radio royalty rates, about what you would pay,
Yeah.
to do what they call DMC, in the U.S., DMCA radio.
Okay.
For Napster, I was trying to take them legal. But when I saw Rhapsody in 2000, I went, the whole concept of downloads, whether they were 99 cents, $1.99, 59 cents, you weren't going to acquire music, by the piece.
Yeah.
You needed access to everything all the time. And it changed my life. It literally changed the rest of my life in terms of access being much more important than ownership. So
True.
when people say, well, you can buy a song for 99 cents and put it on your iPod, I go, do you know anybody who spent $10,000 to put 10,000 songs on their iPod? They may have acquired them from places like Napster, but the whole idea of music as a service, it completely has changed the industry, and the industry is now more profitable than it's ever been. The major record
Really?
companies are making more money now than they made 15 years ago.
Where are the revenue streams? Where is it coming from?
They're making.
From
Warner
streaming.
Brothers is making
It's not concert
$1 million a day on from Spotify alone.
But the original question was, if you're a musician, where should they start? If I was a label, I'd have a different answer. But if the question is if I'm a musician, I would say don't sign.
Right. Don't sign.
Keep your master rights as long as
Yeah.
possible.
Okay. So you've read Don Passman's book. No, okay, right.
Join the collective.
Right.
I'm going to plug that because that's the Rattles belief system. And don't rely on streams to pay your rent because they won't.
They won't.
So
it-
don't sign because a label might spend $100,000 making a record, but through technology and through the power of a collective, you can achieve that for a much lower cost now and retain the rest of your music.
Right.
And if you can figure out other revenue streams, we talked about live concerts, but also people are out there doing masterclasses and sharing their skills in different ways. There's a lot of direct to fan activity that's outside of the streaming world. You're going to get to paying your rent a lot faster. Not that it's easy; it's still very hard to make a living out of music.
Yeah.
But
So it's
labels
based
is
on
not the way to do it.
At NAB, the Broadcasters Conference a few years ago, I was moderating a panel, and I had two people that owned rights. I had a publisher and a label, and I had two services. I had Rhapsody and Pandora, and then I had an artist. And the services were saying they were paying too much to the rights holders, and the rights holders were saying they weren't getting enough from the services. And I turned to the artist and I said, would you rather be paid right now or played? He says, oh, played. He said, before we were on Pandora, and they were this is a weird one, they were the top 5 neoclassical genre. So they were like doing classical quartet. He said, we couldn't play in a hall in our own town. He said, we just did a 50-city tour from basically our exposure on Pandora. So
which
did
means
they
that
get a lot of money from Pandora? No, but did Pandora give
concerts,
them the
experiences.
megaphone
Yeah.
to create an audience? So it used to be that you toured to promote your record. Now the music becomes the promotion vehicle to promote your touring.
Yeah, you basically treat Spotify like free marketing.
Yes.
And it just like social media,
Free
which has
marketing
become
or access to the market, which is I
There's
would
still
say
a-
slightly different.
You have a level. The good news is we now have a level playing field. The bad
Yeah.
news is we now have a
So
level playing field.
you guys
And
have
you
big-
have to
the big
stand
field.
out among a lot more blades
Stand
of
out,
grass
yeah.
than
That
you
is
used
my other gripe about this. We have a lot of artists in the collective, and it seems like now 50% of their job is social media.
Right.
They spend more time curating their Instagram feed, doing their Twitter, doing their Facebook than they do in the studio, because it's all about who can shout the loudest. So if someone can come up with some tech to fix that problem, that would be...
But I'd love your thoughts on it's your show, but I love your
yeah.
I argue with artists all the time that their voice in social media has to be about what moves them, not come see my show, buy my T-shirt. It's got to be about, I just heard some great music the other night, I saw a movie, I read a book, and basically create, a connection with their fans that's not about, we're playing next Tuesday, come see us. Because you'll
People
lose.
are not expecting that. People are expecting to have a friend, a digital friend or someone to contrast his own profile or personality and look to find, I don't know, if he likes some kind of clothes, they're going to say, hey, maybe I like that too. It's something about identity, and trying to fit this
people want an authentic voice to vibe with, and I totally get that, but it's become such a drain on time. And also I empower the shy artist, because today's market is really hard for the shy artist. You couldn't be a Radiohead nowadays. You couldn't be you can't really be enigmatic and mysterious. You have to be on a self-promotion
and talk
steam
about
train
you,
every day, otherwise you get forgotten in the tidal wave of 20,000, 30,000 tracks that are getting put on Spotify every day.
But at some point you need some help. I mean, you need some extra money to get out of, to get picked up, because the organic content is really difficult to grow organically. Even though you are pretty good, you have a good stuff, whatever it is, but at some point you need more. Isn't it?
Yeah, you can only game the algorithms so much, and Instagram changes them every week. So
Yeah, sure.
So what are you saying? So the question, I guess I'd put to all of you: if I was a musician today and I had an independent musician, I'm not backed by a label. I have $5,000. Should I spend that in the studio making better music? Should I spend it on marketing?
A little bit
Marketing.
more marketing.
My thing is
That's
marketing
funny
only because if you, I mean, again, I can,
You need both.
Yeah,
I
of
can
course,
play you
but-
demos that were done, and play you the finished after they spend $100,000,
yeah.
and I prefer the demo.
Yes, yes,
And
yes.
the
It's
demo
more
had the
authentic.
connection, and it's authentic,
Yeah, I think
and
so,
they
yeah.
basically mixed it and massaged it into such a vanilla shape that
Yes.
it lost. You know, well, we've got to take that out because it might bother whatever, and it's a little harsh there. Leave it in.
Yes.
So, I mean, you have the tools now. You can do in a home studio or at the collective or, you know, in a performance space what used to cost tens of thousands of dollars. But be happy with it. Don't overthink it. Put it into marketing, but not necessarily social media. Think of other things. It's like I talked them out of one of these hats today because it was 25 euros. I thought it should be 20 euros. At 20 euros, I would have pulled a 20 euro note out of my pocket and bought the hat. At 25, they lost me, so I said, give me one. And they gave me one. The alternative was I wouldn't have had a hat. When you're selling merch at a show, yes, that's a revenue stream, but sell your t-shirts at 10 bucks or 20 bucks. Don't try and get 30 bucks out of a new fan. Your fans are your billboard. And so if you have 50 people leave your show wearing your t-shirt, that's 50
That's better,
people
yeah.
carrying
but
the message.
there's also
as
the perceived
opposed-
value. There is also the perceived value. If you just put 10 bucks for a t-shirt or 50 bucks, you won't see the t-shirt as the same one, right?
I will buy it.
I
I
don't
mean,
know.
I'm starting to figure out how to talk you guys out of one of these. I mean, you know, unless you're selling them
we'll
here
get
by
you
the
one.
door.
We'll
yeah,
get you one.
whatever.
So I feel
figure
like
if
I
he's
should
got
have-
one-
It's already shipped.
I feel like I should have added a third option to my $5,000 question, and that was, should you put it in tech? Because we're talking about some quite old school revenue streams, but some of the most interesting uses of tech, I think, like I was talking before, is the way people are using it to enhance art. You had a question earlier about AR and VR.
Yep.
And I think that can be a way to really stand out in the crowd now by using tech in an interesting and innovative way. I know the Childish Gambino AR games just came
Right,
out. Bjork does
right.
some crazy VR stuff. Gorillaz did the Haunted House album launch.
Right.
If you can put your money towards using tech in an interesting way and generating PR, I guess that way,
Right.
it sounds cynical.
Yeah.
You'll get
If
much
you can-
further than
Or
you
maybe
would.
you
Which
can
is
do
But
also
if you can do
important
an
marketing.
innovate, if you can do something innovative as a digital, I don't want to say stunt because it cheapens it, but something to bring attention. But I've actually asked 3 or 4 conferences in the last couple of years to let me do a panel called "Yes, I know Bjork did it. Now what?" Because well, Bjork did that. When you said, I have the same reaction of she's done VR, she's done immersive, she's done surround, she's done all this stuff. People try to copy it. They don't use it as inspiration. They use it to, how do I imitate this? And that doesn't get you anywhere. It really doesn't. You have to like figure out, how do I use that to inspire me to do something a little bit different? It doesn't
But
have to be
it-
totally different.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be totally different. It's all in the same vein of what I believe, and I would say this because it's what I work on. People wanting to interact with music more. They want to be able to affect the product. They want to get in there, to play with the stems, maybe listen in 3D. It's all about like an enriched experience now,
yeah.
beyond just sticking your headphones on and listening in
and
stereo.
Make it, for example, you can have a meeting with your fans in a VR set with 360, and probably people now is going more to that. No, you know,
Yeah.
young people is more is like use more of this kind of technologies. You know, it's not something like strange.
Yeah, well, I used to have a live show that was EDM but narrative based, and for a long time we tried to figure out how to put essentially choose your own adventure structure into this storyline. It was beyond my technological capability, but lots of people have done it now, and that's the stuff that got the best reaction because it took this one-way broadcast type relationship with the fan to a two-way interaction, and I think that's kind of what gets people excited now.
I agree with everything you said, with the caveat, you want to let people have the ability to do it, understanding at a certain point they want to stop doing it. And so we learned early. I've been working on interactive storytelling since the mid 80s.
We should talk.
And we learned that if you let the fan drive their outcome of the story, they're actually disappointed. You have to come up with how can they drive the story along to a point and then deliver a an oh my gosh. Because if you
Limited
say at the very
responsibility.
beginning of it, like with Clue, that it's Colonel Mustard in the library, then what's the point? So we also found that if you, we're doing the Smithsonian Museum in Washington, D.C. We did a thing where we dropped people onto a street in Washington and said, where do you want to go? People hated it. We gave them a tour of the Smithsonian museums, and at any point you could jump off the interactive, this was on a CD-ROM. You could jump off the tour and go deeper into the Air and Space Museum or go deeper into the Hall of Inventions, but it had to have a spine.
Yeah, you're
because
still on the
when I
tracks.
got tired of interacting, just entertain me. I mean, so
Yeah.
you do want to be able to do the stuff you're talking about, but there has to be a default experience.
A safety
that's
net.
really a safety net
Yeah.
that's really satisfying.
Yeah.
That's-
There's actually a really interesting startup, I think, pitching here tomorrow called Audio Drops. Do you know Audio Drops? Who have an interesting concept where you can geospatially fix tracks to specific locations. So you can
Right.
create, instead of an album launch, you could create a walk through a city where
cool.
certain songs are triggered by passing by certain views or certain inspirational things. Things like that give the listener just an extra layer of data, essentially, on how this piece of art came into being. I think that's the really exciting bit that tech can enable.
That's really cool.
And I think
gotta
that
check that
the
one out.
difficult part is like the storytelling. So when I talk with anyone doing like VR or AR, it's like the storytelling is not the same as the cinema, and people are still thinking, many people, okay, I'm going to do something in VR, but it's like, I'm doing like a cinema stuff in the VR and only you can move and that's all. And, the narrative is going to be very different because it's another like
That's
a
the problem.
hardware. And nobody knows actually the storytelling of this new kind of hardware. But you can, you can research a little bit. There's a few successful cases.
And
Interesting.
it can't be the whole thing. It's got to be, again, it's another tool. It's not,
another tool, yeah.
I mean, when the Star Wars Rogue One came out, was it Rogue One or whatever it's called?
Yeah.
You know, there was, you could like ride on her jet flyer and you could look around.
It just offended a
You
lot of
don't
Star
want
Wars
to do
fans,
that
I
for the
think.
whole movie.
No, of course.
I mean, but that one time when you could actually see, wow, where did we just go? That's cool. It doesn't sustain itself for 2.5 hours.
Yes,
Yeah.
What a
Unless if you spot a good star somewhere, I don't know, you want to keep watching, I don't know.
Well, I mean, if it
Sounds
was
weird.
Margot Robbie in VR, then no, it's never mind.
Moving on quickly. Did
Okay,
we answer
quick.
your
Hey, let's
question? I don't know if we answered
Guys,
your question.
we have some people around us, so if you have any question,
him if he has a
feedback,
question.
anything, please.
They
you-
just want to hear more
you
about
know what?
Meatloaf.
The music or entertainment industry is something that I don't really know. I'm in marketing. I've made a lot of different industry, but I would say that music is really different in some sort of. As a marketer, when you just land on the market, you are trying to spot needs, right? If you land on the music industry, I do not think like people are expecting stuff. You need to give them stuff, right? And you are expecting a response, right? They are taking it or not. It's hard to make some marketing research to actually feel that, I don't know how it works. How would you make the parallel with other industries?
Well, similar to what you
I've no
were
idea.
saying earlier. I mean, about don't sign with a label, don't give up your masters. I agree with all of that. The major problem in the indie music market is your friends won't tell you you suck. And you need to get input from people. Whether
Yeah,
you're
I
an
think-
author, if you're writing a book, yes, you can self-publish on Amazon, but the advantage of having an editor at a publisher is they say, chapter 12 is a mess. Were you drunk when you wrote that one?
Yes.
Go back
We have a solve for that, and it's called
So-
joining a collective.
Okay. But
there'll
you
be a
do
Russell
need,
coming to a
you do
city near
need
you.
candid feedback.
Yeah.
So the more
from-
you can
and
put
qualified
yourself
feedback.
out there from But sometimes it's just play somebody a song and go, what do you think?
Yeah.
But a stranger and say, what do you think of this? And just get feedback.
So I have
and that's
a lot
what
of-
we're missing a lot of the time
I've split feelings about a movement towards kind of A/B testing music in the market. I know I'm gonna get his name wrong. Who's the cowboy song guy? The biggest.
Oh,
song.
Little Nas X?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he does a lot of, we'd call it A/B
Do
testing.
you know how
right?
old I am
Yeah.
and I know that?
I know.
Anyway,
The horse song.
it's
the cowboy
frightening.
song.
I'm older than him.
And I mean, I have
woke up
issues with
from-
like, I love memes. I have issues with meme music. That's a separate issue for a separate day. But he's had a really strong reaction to putting stuff out there that's unfinished, saying, "Hey, what do you guys think of this lick? What do you think about this?" And adjusting his product based on the feedback from the market. That is one way to do it.
I hear
But
what you're
you-
saying, and I totally agree that it shouldn't be, tell me what to do, I'll do this. You shouldn't be
You
that
lose a
malleable.
bit of authenticity
get-
and intent.
There is something between doing the first take and going, okay, we're done,
Mm-hmm.
and Steely Dan taking 10 years to finish a record.
Yeah.
And,
I definitely there's you need to build feedback into the early stages of creating
Right.
your work. But if you really believe that having that particular distortion on that particular guitar
Go for it.
is a thing that's important to you, even though everybody hates it, if you can defend it and say, but I
Yeah.
want it to be that
But
way
it's
You
a
because
made
of
the
this.
point. No, you made a great point. If you, I will challenge people. Whether it's a startup doing why do you have this feature in here? I don't know. We thought it was. No, take it out. This doesn't work. But they go, no, it's here because, and they can defend what the thought process was or what the creative process was.
Yeah.
If I will, do you know who Ricky Lee Jones is? Possibly. We had an artist that was doing Saturday Night Live, the TV show in the States. She wanted to do a very down-tempo, very Tom Waits song. Saturday Night Live wanted her to do this poppy boppy song, and she said, you can kick me off the show. I'm not doing that song. I'm doing this one. And we ended up bringing in, literally at the time, Steely Dan's producer, a guy named Gary Katz, was working at Warner Brothers in New York. We had him go in and talk to her. And he came out and said, she's doing the bluesy song. And if you want to kick her off the show, kick her off the show. There is a reason she's doing it. She's making a very direct artistic statement that she's not here to be whatever. This is the song that's the most important song on her album.
Yeah, it's all about
And
intention
it broke her. It broke the record. I mean, when I say broke her, it made her a star. Her appearance stopped the show. When you saw her do this down-tempo, like 3 in the morning, if you're familiar with Tom Waits.
Tom Waits.
Yeah,
Yeah,
this
that's
really grumbly song.
Yeah.
She sold 1 million albums.
Yeah.
Had she done the other song, maybe she still would have sold. But people went, did you see Ricky Lee Jones on Saturday Night Live? It was effing amazing.
I just realized I have seen her live. I know her guitarist. I got into she did a show in London last year, and it was absolutely amazing.
She's
astounding.
wonderful. Now, I've known her for 20 years, and I walked up to her about 5 years ago and said, hi, Ricky. She goes, hi. And I go, it's great to see you. And she goes, it's great to see you, too. I said, you don't have a clue who I am. She goes, not a clue.
But
She
to
smoked a lot of things
as
with
they
Tom
bring it
Waits.
back to technology, it
Yes,
comes
going
down
back
to no. This is a segue, but we'll get there. So it's about intention and making considered choices about your music,
Yes.
not just blindly following every single piece of feedback, because that will drive you insane. So that's coming back to my little gripe in technology that just makes music easier and makes music faster to make. I think that takes away from the choices that you're making in the studio or in the
Demos,
if you don't enjoy the process of creating music, you just enjoy the process of releasing it, and you're trying to shorten that process more and more, you're probably in the wrong business.
Exactly.
You need to spend time thinking about those musical choices. So when someone comes at you and says, well, I don't like the banjo on it or whatever, you go, well, this is why I put it in, and it was a choice, rather
And that's
than
right.
an AI system suggested to me that I should have a banjo. Like, it doesn't really work
But anyway,
for me.
there's like a bad disease, I think, in Chile, and I see with artists in Chile, musicians, that anyway, they have their songs and they play, and then you say something like, "Hey, I don't like too much this part, or maybe you can do it in this way," and they like feel like that their world is going to go down and then get depressed. And I think, okay, no wait, you in the real world, you're always like having this exposure, so it's naturally
Yeah.
that people have
Yeah.
to say something. Maybe you are agree or not, but it's something that has to be
Interesting.
occurred.
I see, as you speak, I see music more as a gift than a product. You know, it's more something that you give and you try to catch people's attention, and the whole market, the whole industry is paying you for getting the attention. Anyway, that's what one thought. Now we have one question from the public. So tell me, what's your question?
Hi, I'm Whitney. So going back on your thought, actually, so you're talking about how streaming is getting bigger and bigger, but I myself still buying CDs, and even though I think it's growing from marketing intents, don't you think it's pushing artists to create better products and full products so that the experience starts as soon as you get the box and the CD, and when you go see them live, you have the whole outfits of the artist and the choreography and all. And I feel like, for example, in Belgium, Stromae is really a great example of that. So you have the whole box. When you go see him live, you have like a whole universe you're buying, and you don't have that through streaming because it's usually through a playlist you're gonna listen to those artists. So don't you think it's like pushing them to be more creative about their own products?
Yeah, I think super quick, and I will.
No, go ahead.
So
No.
I'm hogging the mic a bit. But that is partly a symptom of where the labels are going with this, because you don't get signed for an album anymore. You get signed for best 3 songs, most likely 1, and they'll put it up and they'll see if it gets a bump in streams, and if it doesn't, then you're dropped. People aren't putting money behind developing these larger scale projects. So then, when I was saying, like, if you can use technology to kind of enhance whatever message, whatever artistic intent that is behind the album without just putting it straight into marketing, then I think that's maybe how you're going to get some airtime.
So everybody argues about how much everybody's getting paid for streams. And if you look at Spotify as a way, it's a free marketing tool. If I was still at EMI and I'm renegotiating the Spotify deal, what I want back, and I've said this for years, what I thought was great about digital, artists have agonized over what's the cover photo on the CD. Which mix should we put on there? Digital is the first, what we're doing right now is the first time that music isn't being defined by the format. So we used to have a 45 that held 2 songs. Then we had an album and it held roughly 20 songs. Then we had a 70-minute CD and artists recorded too much music. No, I'm kidding. But we're not, you don't have to fill a CD, you don't have to fill an album. You can release 3 songs, you can release 2 songs, you can release 10 songs, but the liner notes, the artwork, the alternate mix, here's 5 different mixes that we tried. We like all 5 of them. Pick which one you want to listen to. We're losing that on Spotify and Napster and Tidal and Qobuz, where you're not getting access to the packaging. You're not getting, the artist's comments on, you are through things like Genius or the lyrics through Lyric Find, but you're not getting that same album experience or CD experience. There's a label named Rhino Records. I don't know if you're familiar. They do the amazing box sets of the Warner artists where you have a 30-page booklet and it shows the whole history of the recording sessions. That stuff is all actually really good stuff.
That's funny. And there is one thing I'm realizing is that I do not know the artist's name anymore or the song's name because I'm just listening to playlist. I just arrived.
Files.
You're a lean back listener is what we call it.
Exactly.
But that's the other thing. Okay. Many, many years ago, I won't say how long ago, I'm working for Warner Brothers Records and I'm traveling for the first time. And there was a very attractive flight attendant on the plane. And I want to go out with her. So I'm trying to impress her. And she goes, "What do you do?" I go, "I work at Warner Brothers." "Oh, what is that?" "It's a record label." I'm working at the time I'm working with James Taylor. "Who's that?" and I'm working with the Doobie Brothers. Who's that? And I discovered, literally on a 1-hour flight, that people listen to music and sometimes really don't care who the artist is. It is background. It is entertainment, but they don't care as much about the music as we care about the music.
Yeah.
And I had so that was years ago, a couple of years ago, a guy at Universal Music, Carlos said, we get hung up in that we really get in the weeds of how important being able to manipulate the music and getting quizzed about the music and all this, that there are people that just want to lean back and...
Yeah, I think being in the music industry, you kind of forget that those people exist. And I went on a date with one of them by accident.
What?
It was a horror show. It was a first date.
Was there a second date?
Wait till the end of the story.
Okay.
Come on.
Wait.
Give me
Wait
one
for it.
anecdote. Fairly early on, we talked about what we did in our various jobs, and I said I was in the music industry, and I was like, great, like, ooh, so what's your favorite band? It's like, that's a pretty simple opening question, and verbatim, his answer was, I'm just not really that into music, and I don't think I'd ever heard that sentence out of a human's mouth, and I was like, oh, like, those people exist, and I was like, so what do you listen to? And he's like, I don't know, I guess maybe in the gym, like I'll put on a Spotify gym playlist.
The playlist for the breakfast.
And those people. And I have nothing intelligent to say about that. Then it was a shock to me because I'd grown up with music and music people my whole life. But that is a part of the market that you have to consider.
Probably most of the audience is like that. You know? I think the people that like music very much is something more like a niche. So people use music to go to running.
Yeah.
And
Is
probably
it a
that's
threat?
more like.
But
Is
I
this a
think
threat?
design music for your super fans. Don't design music for people who want to listen to it in the gym because fuck them. Why would you care? Like if those people are listening
the
to you.
AI is going to do that music.
Exactly, that's what the AI is for.
But did you give him any suggestions, or you just...
I did actually. I
And?
introduced him to a band called Queen,
Right?
and he wasn't into it. I tried all types of things. The date became quite weird at that point. It was just me like putting stuff on Spotify. I'm like, what about this? What about this? What about this? And then I kind of realized that it's probably time to go home, and I gave up. So, sorry, dude, wherever you are.
Okay, I'm looking at the public. Is there anyone who has questions, some comments, or anything to share with us?
I still want to hear from him.
This guy.
Oh, the guy
got the
was
burning question.
We have someone sleeping, so
Dad, you said you were... No, great.
don't disturb me. Okay, so I have one last question for you guys. Do you have something? Okay, I'm not sure I can really phrase it in English, but I will try. Do you have any counterintuitive opinion on globally on music industry that people think is not true?
I'm sure you have plenty.
No. Really, in one sentence. Were you at my presentation the other day? No.
The ecosystems one yesterday.
Not the ecosystem, the one about the history of tech.
No, I think I
So
said
my,
the hackathon.
my presentation is called A Sea of Gray Hats. My son teases me and says it's a sea of gray hair. But everyone goes, record companies, evil, black hats, artists, great, white hats. We're all gray hats. I mean...
What do you mean, great hat?
Gray. In other words, nobody is all... It's all about the music. I mean, I meet artists. It's all about how many T-shirts did we sell last night. There was a band I worked with years ago called Asia. And the first tour, they loved each other. They were excited. The second tour, they never spoke to each other except to discuss how many tickets did they sell and how many T-shirts did they sell. It wasn't about the music anymore. So it's not artists are always wonderful and labels are always jerks. It's not technology
It's
wants
also
to
business.
destroy the music business.
Yeah.
I meet more people that use technology to make music better, not to kill it. You know, so Napster killed the music business. No, it didn't. It was an iteration.
Yeah.
There is a book that I will recommend, and I'll shut up and I want to hear more anecdotes, called Ruling the Waves. It's by a Harvard professor. Her name is Deborah Spar. And she says through any technological or sociological change, there's a period of unrest. And everything's screwed and it's never going to be any good and we're ruined. And she said, this was back in 2001, she said the music industry is going to go through 3 or 4 years of whatever, and all of a sudden you're going to see that everybody who's fighting are going to start working together. And I'm telling you, if you look at the revenues this last year, Universal Music made more in the last year than they've made in any other year in their history. And it's from streaming and from sync licenses and from brand tie-ins. It's not from selling little silver discs.
I think Spotify is still making a loss, losing money.
That's because they have 1,000 people in the office in
No,
New
but
York,
this,
and I have
this
no
year,
idea
this
what
year.
800 of them do.
And they have to pay the labels.
Also, yeah.
Oh, damn,
Yeah.
they have to pay for the music. That's
That's why
terrible.
Spotify's making a loss. I'm not, as much as it might seem it, I'm not actually anti-label. I do think the labels have a part to play. I just think that it's going to become more of a partnership model. We're moving away from this idea that a music career is the same for every artist.
Okay.
People are creating these bespoke kind of situations now. The labels need to be prepared to offer a more customized service. Whether or not that means just doing publishing or whether it means just doing all types of services. But I think as soon as they can break out of that mentality of a record label is a 360 record label or whatever it is, and into, okay, well, let's split this out into different buckets of services and let different artists build their careers in their own ways that suit themselves, you'll hopefully go back to a period of time where we have, these careers with longevity, as opposed to these quick, 6-month flash in the pan structures. That's my. I don't know if that's controversial in any
Yes,
way.
that's a good
That's a good
answer.
one.
I mean,
For me, I think that is the people think many times that musicians or the music industry it's all about like drinking and be self-confident about you and say things, and you know that it's not like that. Many people are actually very insecure, and the artists are very insecure in some way.
Shy musicians.
Yeah, something like that. And the other thing is that people think that you drink all the day. That's kind of true, but you have to work hard too much in the industry because it's a poor industry in some way, and you have to have your own plans. Be very strategic for that. It's not only about like emotions and getting and drinking beer, and probably people who doesn't be involved in the music industry think it's all about like great moments, but actually you have to work a lot.
Yeah, we should do a quick shout out for mental health for musicians. It's a big area of discussion at the moment, and like you said, there's a assumption that the best music is created from people that have suffered trauma or in some kind of terrible place in their life. And a lot of musicians and artists I know try and push themselves into these headspaces to say, look, this is the only way that I'm going to make good art. And yes, that you might get a good song out of that, but it's not sustainable. And
Yes.
the most successful musicians I know have professionalized, and they said it's not about getting super fucked up after a breakup and spending 3 weeks with a guitar. It's just turning up every day
Yes.
and understanding that 9 out of 10 tracks or even 99 out of 100 tracks that I write are going to be shit.
Yeah.
But I have to turn up every day and do it to get results.
Yeah.
And that's how you do it long term and with a healthy mind.
And it's not like people think that when musicians always think that you have to wait to the intuition to arrive, and actually intuition arrive when you are working.
It's like the
And
gym.
sometimes you have the lucky that you are in the bed with a headache and you have an intuition of music intuition and you play it, or if you feel bad. But normally intuitions come up, and actually I study that cognitively. And,
Yeah. It is, it's like the gym.
intuition is something
The
that's
longer
arrive
you
when
go
you are
without-
making things, when you are
keep making,
concentrate.
right?
So you all the day you have to play,
put it
play,
on
and
the
in
market.
one moment you're going
Yeah.
to find the intuition, but you don't have to wait the intuition to play. It's the other way.
Creativity is a muscle. You've got to work it out.
Yeah, like any cognitive abilities like that, you have to practice.
Guys, it was a pleasure for me to actually speak about music, because it's one of the first industry to be kind of disrupted by digital. And still, even though this industry is pretty mature, digitally speaking, I don't know if it's really English to say that, but it's funny to see that there is so many directions to go through, so many possibilities, so many opportunities. But
I think here's the
Yeah.
telltale thing, and I don't mean. I
Tell
know
me,
I'm
Ted.
good at. She already knows I'm good at
Yep.
interrupting. We're at an event. We're at a conference that part of the conference is being supported by Universal Music Group. 10 years ago, if anybody from Universal Music Group was going to come to this conference, they would have to lie to their boss and say, "I'm going on vacation somewhere." There are things being done by the majors and by things like Cobalt and by A2IM and AIM in where you would have to do it secretly before to try and move anything forward. You have initiatives at Warner now with Scott Cohen coming in as head of innovation. You've got some people at Sony. You've got Universal's incubator program where the labels are realizing that the music tech people that are like attending this event, like what they're doing in Chile, is the future of the business, not the destruction of the business. And so I think that for me is the most heartening thing, is seeing that front and center there is industry support for innovation as opposed to it's going to kill my job.
All right, come on. It's changing, you need to, just a little opinion, you need to disrupt yourself. I mean, you just need to try to use technology to empower yourself, to be more productive, to reach more people, and so on. But certainly you don't have to be afraid about change, of course.
And actually, it's like an opportunity for it's like a new field, and you can work on that. And like a few years ago, like working in the music industry was only like labels or musician, but now you can be a programmer, like a coding very nerd, and you can, if you like music, you can work on this, And actually, we need these these nerd guys, So it's like it's an opportunity to live from the music industry with different abilities that it was not the usual abilities.
Yeah. I really appreciate that you accepted our invitations. This was the very first podcast session of Café Sans Filtre in English. And this is also the last.
Our English was pretty good.
It was the best one.
It's the first and the last one.
I was about to say it's
How
the
can it get better?
it's the last one of the season, not the last one in English. I hope so, because I'm going to move in San Francisco, by the way. So in October I'm going to be living there. So and you were moving to LA, right? So let's go, everybody, to the West Coast. Join Ted
Go
and
down to Chile.
Chile.
and Chile as well, which
I'm coming
is
to Chile in November.
Yeah, we invite him. Yeah, you're gonna, so you say it publicly,
Says
so you
Chile
now
is
have to
heating
go.
up.
so. Let's meet there. Guys, thank you very much. We have some wines bottles for you from Chile. Thanks to our
you so
friends from
much.
Chile.
Agency promote representation.
So this is for you. Enjoy, drink wines, tequila, whatever you want.
best
But
wine, the
now
best
it's time for the networking
Chilean
sessions. Thank you
tequila.
very much. See you in September. Thank you very much.
Yeah, see you.
Yay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Beers, tequila.
Tequila.
Water.
Tequila.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
So
That was
everything
great.
is gonna be on our website, café-sans-filtre.org.